Blood Meridian and the Tarot. In Chapter 7 of Blood Meridian, 4 Mexican performers join John Joel Glanton's gang in the little town of Corralitos and accompany the scalp hunters across the desert. Seated around the campfire the first night of their journey en route to Llanos, Glanton addresses the father of this family and asks if he tells fortunes. The answer is yes. The showman, as Glanton calls him, collects a deck of tarot cards from his belongings, beckons his wife forward, and a curious scene unfolds. The man leads his wife to the edge of the firelight, seats her facing the darkness, then blindfolds her. The woman asks his wife if she can see, and she assures him that she cannot. Readers sense that a performance is in the offing. Whether it will contain tricks or magic, we don't yet know. The juggler fans his cards and approaches Glanton, but Glanton waves him away. The juggler turns his attention to Black John Jackson, who selects a card from the deck. Jackson looks at the card, then passes it back to the juggler, who urges the men of Glanton's gang to be quiet, then holds the card aloft and announces it is the Fool. The juggler's wife, still blindfolded at the edge of the firelight, repeats the name of the card, then begins to chant. After a time, she says, El Negro, identifying John Jackson as the man who selected this card. Members of Glanton's gang and the reader now understand the nature of this performance. A man will select a card from the juggler will name the card, then the juggler's wife will divine which of Glanton's men chose it. It's an impressive trick, and if the scene offered no more than this, a trick is all it would be. Of course, Glanton's gang is a tough audience, and none of them are amused by this performance, except the judge, who is seemingly entertained at how unsettled John Jackson is by all this idolatry. When Jackson, who doesn't speak Spanish, asks Holden what the woman is saying, the judge tells him, I think she means to say that in your fortune lie our fortunes all. In John Sepik's notes on Blood Meridian, the scholar has the following to say about the Fool and John Jackson. Quote, El Tonto, the Fool, is the most powerful of all the tarot trumps. The Fool can indicate lost wits, divine wisdom, juggler, magician, coyote, raven, or simply trickster. End quote. Sepich astutely points out that Black John Jackson is the first of the scalp hunters to be killed in the raid on the Yuma Ferry toward the end of Blood Meridian. I'll say more about this later. It's important that readers see Jackson's card as a foretelling of the fate of the entire Glanton gang. Continuing his act, the juggler seeks out his next mark. When he stops in front of the judge, Holden redirects him to the kid, telling him to try young Blasarius yonder. Blasarius is an antiquated term for arsonist. It calls back to the first chapter of the novel where the kid and Toadvine burned down a hotel in Nacogdoches, an act the judge witnessed, but this term and its significance flies over the heads of everyone present. Surely Toadvine and the illiterate kid can't know it, and none of the other scalp hunters were present for that Nacogdoches burning. In his Reader's Guide to Blood Meridian, Shane Schimpf points out that Blasarius has another connotation, one who excites factions, quarrels, or sedition. As we read the final chapters of the book where Judge Holden tells the kid that, quote, he alone was mutinous, that he alone, quote, broke with the body of which he was pledged apart and poisoned it in all its enterprise, we do well to remember the judge's earlier comment and Schimpf's excellent annotation. And so the juggler moves on to the kid, and the kid bids him select a card. Our protagonist obliges. Quote, he took one. He'd not seen such cards before, yet the one he held seemed familiar to him. He turned it upside down and regarded it, and turned it back. The card is the Four of Cups, and the kid actually has seen it before. In Chapter 5, after surviving the Comanche attack on Captain White's war party, the kid and Sproul stagger into a Mexican village where every resident has been slaughtered, presumably by the same Comanche horsemen who annihilated White's filibusters. The kid wanders from house to house, looking for food and water, and in one of the homes sees, quote, a gypsy card that was the Four of Cups, end quote. According to Schimpf, the Four Cups signifies apathy, boredom, and weariness with life. Perhaps the kid is apathetic, but compared to whom? When he joins Glanton's gang, he quickly distinguishes himself as its least apathetic and most merciful member. Not even Tobin will remove the Apache arrow from Davy Brown's leg. John Sepich locates a meaning that makes more sense with regards to McCarthy's protagonist. Quote, the Four of Cups is designed in Kabbalistic interpretations of the Tarot by the Hebrew word chest, which is translated as mercy. One answer to why does the judge want to destroy the kid is that McCarthy has twice associated the kid with a card whose symbolism suggests a divided heart, and has generally associated him with the quality of mercy, end quote. We're back to the passage I referenced above. Late in the novel, the judge reads out his indictment against the kid. Quote, there's a flawed place in the fabric of your heart. Do you think I could not know? You alone were mutinous. You alone reserved in your soul some corner of clemency for the heathen, end quote. Of course, the kid understands nothing about the juggler's performance, and like Jackson, doesn't speak Spanish. When the blindfolded woman begins to chant, identifying the drawer of the card as the youngest member of the gang, the kid is not amused. Get the hell away from me, he tells the juggler. The judge, however, is thoroughly delighted by this exchange and begins laughing silently. He then directs the juggler to his next and final client, El Jefe, meaning Glanton naturally, the leader, the boss. The juggler moves on to the captain, and Glanton selects a card, but in passing it back to the juggler, a gust of wind sucks the card off into the night. The narrator never identifies it for the reader. But the blindfolded woman begins to chant regardless, a monologue rendered entirely in Spanish. Here's a translation of what she says. Quote, the chariot, upside down, card of war and revenge. I saw it wheelless on a dark river, lost. The card is lost in the night, a curse. What an evil wind, hearse full of bones. The boy that... The entire time she's speaking, Glanton is calling for her to shut up. He draws his revolver and seems about to shoot her, but Holden intervenes. Quote, the judge, like a great ponderous djinn, stepped through the fire and the flames delivered him up as if he were in some way native to their element. He puts his arm around Glanton. Someone snatched the old woman's blindfold from her, and she and the juggler were clouded away, end quote. The card that the juggler's wife references is the chariot. Schimpf has this to say about its significance. Quote, as the old woman says, this is considered a card of war when inverted. The card represents triumph over adversity, as well as vengeance. Will to power, a quintessentially Nietzschean idea, is at the heart of this card. The chariot stands for harnessing one's will to overcome obstacles in one's path. When inverted, it represents failure and destruction. It seems clear that McCarthy is foreshadowing the ultimate demise of the Glanton gang at the Yuma Crossing. At the beginning of Chapter 19, the chapter wherein Glanton and most members of his gang are murdered, McCarthy provides a head note that harkens back to this old prophetess and her chariot. Quote, cart without wheels. At the Yuma Crossing, where the gang takes up residence toward the end of the book, Glanton and his men have been using an overturned wagon as a ferry boat, literally an inverted cart without wheels on a dark river. When John Jackson walks out to urinate in the river on the morning of the Yuma attack, he stands on the wheelless cart, then sees a gold coin lodged in the boards. He reaches down to retrieve it. When he stands up, quote, a long cane arrow passed through his upper abdomen. 2 more struck and lodged fast in his chest and groin. They were a full 4 feet in length, and they lofted slightly with his movements, like ceremonial wands, and he seized his thigh where the dark arterial blood was spurting along the shaft, and took a step toward the shore and fell sideways into the river. End quote. A page later, nearly all of the scalp hunters are dead, and the Glanton gang is no more.